Harp on Sports with Seth Harp.
You know what time it is.
3, 2, 1. Let's do this.
Go, bartender! Your food needs refill!
Harp on Sports, the Bar Podcast Media, Audio and Radio Network. What do we have in store for you on this edition of the program? Brackets to the bank. Our predictions, what we think is going to shake down based on history, not based on gut, based on Vegas, who's right more often than not. And there's certain tendencies and trends every single year. Been at this now for well over 4 decades. I don't fall for too many traps. Every now and then I do fall for one. I always pick a 12 over a 5. There's always this arc. But this year, there's a couple of sneaky things that jump to the front. Also, the SEC, a new record, 14 teams in the NCAA tournament, 14 of 68. It's pretty impressive. That's almost an entire region the SEC has. 15 years ago, the Big East sent 11 out of 14 teams. How'd they do that year? So we're going to wind back the clock there a little decade and a half and see how that shook out when they had a dominant season in terms of flooding the NCAA tournament market. Also, the Gators, a 1 seed, and you look back, it's been over a decade since they were a 1 seed. Their path to the Final Four, look, I think their Sweet 16 game is going to be easier than their second round game. I think Florida pretty much has a cakewalk to the Elite Eight, but then the problems begin. So we're going to look at that. Also, Rory's Rhelm, the Players' Championship. It was in May. It's been in March now for the better part of 6-7 years. And it's interesting because Rory McIlroy is atop the leaderboard, tied atop the leaderboard, heading into a playoff on Monday. And he finds himself in an interesting situation. And golf finds itself in an interesting situation. And, of course, the Tampa Bay Rays as well. And the Rays are in play. They're not going to build a new stadium apparently now. And Stu Sternberg, the owner, they're talking about even remodeling Tropicana Field for the next decade. Basically enticing Major League Baseball to step in and force a sale here. Baseball's going to have to do that. And I'm going to revisit what I still think is the best option for all of this. Again, Harp on Sports, the Bar Podcast Media, Audio, Radio Network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Auditory Route, Harp on Sports, the Bar, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Harp on Sports, the YouTube channel, the Bar, Harp on Sports, the Facebook page, and of course, harponsports.com. Start off the NCAA tournament. Of course, 14 of the 16 SEC teams make it. That's remarkable. That is it. That's downright remarkable when you get down to it. We're never going to see anything like that again. I mean, all but two teams. And as we sit here today and we start to try to lay this out, I wanted to go through and look at the conference as a whole and some of the possibilities that we have when it comes to the conference and when they'd play each other, what this would look like. Because with 14 teams as opposed to 12 teams, with 12 teams, you can scatter teams so they don't play each other till the Sweet 16. With 14 teams, it's damn near impossible. It really is. Now, I'm talking about guaranteed scattering. And 15 years ago, when the Big East sent 11, we had potential in the second round of matchups with Big East teams. The NCAA tournament, when they seed this sucker, they don't want you playing teams from your conference until the Sweet 16. Because you just played a conference tournament in which you played teams 4 days in a row, 3 days in a row, and then you just completed over the course of 2 months, 2.5 months, all those games against the same teams. They want to shake it up, and I get that. I like that. That's good. I like that rule. Or that mindset. So I went through and looked at it here. By the way, 15 years ago, the Big East, 11 of 14 teams, Big East won a national championship. UConn beat Purdue. No, they didn't. UConn beat Butler. See, last year when UConn beat Purdue, UConn beat Butler. And it was one of those years that UConn had struggled. And I believe they were the 7th seed in the Big East tournament. And they ran through it. They won it. They got into the NCAA tournament, and Jim Calhoun and company just mowed through everybody. They did. And here we are on the precipice of a major conference dominating the sucker again. So what do we have here? I want to go through and look at this. Potential second round SEC matchups that you could have. Potential second round matchups that you could have. Start off with the obvious one. Florida could end up playing Oklahoma in the second round. They played them in the regular season. They blitzed them. That would be a 1-8 or 1-9 because UConn is the 8-9 in that Oklahoma region. So there's your first potential second round matchup. Your other potential second round matchup is Alabama and Vanderbilt, a 2 in that 7-10 line. You can see that in the second round. And what is your other one? It's Kentucky and Texas. There's another potential one. The Kentucky is the 3 seed, right? Texas is an 11 in the play-in game, so they'd have to win twice, or they'd have to win once, they'd have to win twice, they'd have to upset the 6, and then in the second round, you would see that as well. So looking at it from that perspective, you have the potential, because you have all these teams, you got 14 teams in this sucker, you have the potential of 3 games in the second round being SEC matchups. So teams are going to start to, check the boxes here. Teams are going to start to disappear. They just are. Whether they get bumped off in the first round or they have to play each other. By the way, the last time we saw a conference, and I went through and looked at this, that sent 3 teams to the Final Four, because the benchmark for college basketball is the Final Four. It just is. If you get to the Final Four, it's considered success. A major success. You ready for this? I think this is so interesting because it's been so long. It's been 3.5 decades. 3.5 decades. Almost, there were 3 ACC teams that went to the Final Four. And you go back even farther. 40 years ago. St. John's, how about that? Georgetown and Villanova. 40 years ago. Sent 3 teams to the Final Four. So if you're looking at that benchmark or that potential, I know there's a thought process. We could get 4. It just doesn't happen. You get 3, but it's going to be a tough road. I went through and I looked at this. Those are your second round matchups. Sweet 16 matchups. You have 3 potential matchups in the Sweet 16 with the conference, those being Tennessee and Kentucky. There's a 3-2 matchup. You have a potential with Arkansas in Mizzou. See, now this is where it starts to get tricky. You're going to have 8s and 7s knock off 2s to get you down to this path. And then you have Auburn A&M as a 1-4 potential. So think about this when you get right down to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 potential SEC matchups in the round of 32 in the Sweet 16. It's a lot. Florida, and then the Elite 8, there's 4. And as you go on here, of course, there's more potential because the field gets smaller. But if you navigate it, you could get SEC. In the Elite 8, you could have Mississippi State and Alabama. Also, you could have Auburn, Ole Miss. You could have Florida, Missouri. And you could have Georgia against Kentucky or Tennessee. So in the Elite 8, you could potentially, again, think about how crazy this is, what I'm saying, that your Elite 8 could all be SEC teams is where I was going with that. Your Sweet 16, you could, of your Sweet 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 of your Sweet 16 could be SEC teams. It just shows you how loaded the brackets are. I should say 11 because you have 3 potential matchups in the second round. So you have 11 of your 16 teams in the Sweet 16 could be SEC. I went through and looked at it, and just from the realistic perspective of what you could get in here, of course, the second round match is the most realistic because they require just 1 game. Then you have to factor in a factor of 2 to get to the Sweet 16, a factor of 4 to get to the Elite 8. So it gets much more complicated at that point. But I think you very well could see a Florida-Oklahoma match in the second round. You bet. You bet you could. You could see Vanderbilt and Bama in the second round. You bet you could. I think Texas having to win twice to get to Kentucky a little more complicated. But, because, again, factor of 2. But it wouldn't surprise me at all. I went through and looked at it because I wanted to look at it through Florida's perspective as well. And Florida, I think Florida's first real, if they have to take on UConn, UConn's been up and down this year, but they have won back-to-back national championships. Isn't it funny, the last 2 teams that have won, and this is this is where they seed this sucker, knowing that they can create drama. If UConn wins and beats Oklahoma and Florida wins, which they're going to skull drag Norfolk State. At that point, then in your second round, you're going to have UConn, back-to-back national champions, taking on the previous team to win back-to-back national championships, Florida in 06 and 07, against UConn of 23 and 24. So they're setting this up so in the second round, they've got the last two teams that have won back-to-back championships. So who has the potential to end UConn's run for a third straight title? The last team to win back-to-back. Of course that's there on purpose. Come on. Why not? Why not? So, I look at that, and from Florida's perspective, I think UConn, just because UConn's got trees, they're big, but Florida, they go so quick and so fast. They'd beat UConn. They would. To me, I look at that. Florida will drill Norfolk State. They'd win in the second round too. I don't see Florida struggling until the Elite Eight. Like a legitimate shot to lose. Now they can get bumped off. Anybody can get bumped off. They're not going to lose Norfolk State, but they could lose to UConn. You bet they could. But to me, of the two seeds that aren't in the SEC, you got? Michigan State is a 2. St. John's is a 2. St. John's is the worst potential 2 seed that they could play. They've destroyed Alabama. They just beat Tennessee. St. John's, because of A, Rick Pitino, and B, what St. John's does. St. John's, of every team in the tournament, shoots the most shots. They say, oh, so what, Seth? Yeah, okay. They shoot a ton. What does that mean? Well, that means they get up a lot of balls. And just like in baseball, putting the ball in play, good things happen. You get hot one night, you shoot 50%, 52% from the field. You shoot more than any other team in the country, and you're making half your shots. I don't care how good you are on the other end, you're going to get beat. St. John's would just scare me because of their propensity to put the ball in the air. They put the ball in the air. They shoot a ton. What does it mean when they shoot a ton? That means they're moving up and down the court. They're moving up and down the court, which what Florida loves to do. But you're not going to wear a team like that out. You're just not. The other thing St. John's does so well is they don't turn the ball over a lot. They're right there with Florida in turning the ball over. And you know what else they do? They rebound. These two teams are close. Florida's a better basketball team. But St. John's, to me, is that team that, from Florida's perspective, they'd scare me to death. They'd scare me to death. If any team's going to scare you. I'm going to get back into a little bit more of that with Florida coming up here. I wanted to go through because when it comes to upsets, you always see things in the first round. What are your guarantees? Was it 18 of the last 19 years, a 12's beaten a 5? And the one that everybody's jumping all over, and I get it. Because even Vegas says, And look, what are upsets? To me, you can fall in love with seeding when it comes to upsets. 11 beat a 6, a 10 beat a 7. To me, it's all about Vegas. If Vegas has a prediction and Vegas is wrong, that's an upset. And to me, the West is the easiest one. Colorado State is a 12. Memphis is a 5. Colorado State's a 2.5-point favorite despite being a 12 seed. How crazy is that? And Memphis has what, like 8 of their last 12 games or 8 of their last 11 games were 4 points or fewer. So they win games, they win them tight, which is a good and a thing that is a cause for concern because they're not dominating teams. So the propensity to keep things that close should worry you. So if you see a 12-5 in the West, you'll see that one. You'll see Colorado State over Memphis. In the Midwest, I think I'm going to do a 10-7 here. It's going to be Utah, UCLA. UCLA is a 4-point favorite right now. UCLA in the Big Ten this year, they had a nice season, but it wasn't one of those prototypical UCLA, here they go, Sweet 16 type of team. They struggled at times. And again, you watch Vegas and you look at some of these spreads, and when you got a 4-point spread in a 10-7, I circle it. The other, another 12-5, University of California, what is this, San Diego? 3.5-point underdog to Michigan. in a 12-5 situation, Michigan just rolled through the Big Ten tournament. And why this is so interesting is back when we had 5 major conferences, now we have 4 major conferences in college basketball. So this is the first year with 4. Last year we had 5. And then, you go back, if you count the Big East as a power player, when they used to have 6. So you go back. It was always interesting because a conference tournament champion lost in the first round in an insane amount, like 13 out of 17 years, going as far back as 3-4 years ago. So, and now we're down to 4, so it doesn't happen nearly as much. But think about that. 13 out of 17 years, a conference tournament champion turned around and stubbed their toe in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. So that would tell you that team would be Michigan. It'd be Michigan, it'd be Florida, it'd be Houston, or it would be what? Duke. It's not going to be those teams, right? The one that would be, it'd be Michigan. It would be, if it's going to be any of them. And then VCU, BYU. BYU is a 2.5-point favorite. That's in the East. So you always want double digit over a single. And if you're going to pick them, the 12s would be University of California, San Diego. You have Colorado State. Utah State is a 10 over the 7, UCLA, and of course VCU 11 over 6 over BYU. So you're always looking for upsets. There they are. I went through it. I'm not going to go through the whole bracket. That's boring and it's just a waste of time. So, plus you hearing about my brackets, like me listening to you about your fantasy football team, whatever. Not the whole way through. Just too daunting. I want to win anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I went through it. I went and looked at it. I have, when it's all said and done, this is what I have. In the Midwest, I've got Duke. They're the 1 seed. I thought long and hard about this, and I don't see anybody. Cooper Flagg, the fact that they still won the ACC and he was hurt, and he didn't have to play next weekend, and they're going to go to the Sweet 16. Now, how intense is that injury? I don't know. But to me, what they did in the ACC tournament after he got hurt sold me on them. Sold me completely on them. So I like Duke to take care of business. They to me, they're going to the Final Four. In the South, I've got Tennessee knocking off Houston as a 2 over a 1. And I wanted to, because I like Kelvin Sampson as a coach. He's done such a good job, and he's gotten to the cusp, and he's knocked on that door, and he's gotten through, but never gotten to that championship game with the Cougars. I still am impressed with Tennessee's depth, and the fact that they got to the SEC championship and ran into the hottest Florida has been in over a decade. I like the job that Rick Barnes does too. So give me Duke and Tennessee on that side of the bracket. On your other side of your bracket, I've got Auburn over Michigan State. Again, Auburn's got 5 guys averaging more than 12 points a game. That's balance. Yeah, I know they stubbed their toe in the SEC tournament, and Florida had their number at times, but Auburn's got the most talent. Auburn has the most talent. Kind of like UConn had the previous 2 years. And then in my other one, I've got St. John's beating Florida. Is my 2 over a 1. Again, the fact that they are as deep as they are, and they shoot as much as they shoot. It's not the mirror image of Florida, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. And you could say, well, their schedule is not as strong, but at that point, doesn't matter. You get to the Elite 8, that doesn't matter. So Auburn, St. John's, Duke, and Tennessee. When it's all said and done, I've got Auburn against Duke, and I think Auburn wins a national title. So that's my national championship. How about that? So there's where we are. Though it's so interesting because, you can pick your upsets early on, but after that you learn your lesson and you start to bail. Once you get to the Sweet 16, you've got double-digit seeds in the Elite 8. That's all that happens. So I think it's a very chalky tournament. I think just like any other year, you'll have 8 to 10 lower seeds beat the higher seeds. You have 2 9s win, 2 10s win, 112, 113. I wanted to pick Lipscomb over Iowa State, but I'm not going to do it. From that to this, I think that we're on the cusp of a major paradigm shift in Major League Baseball. In the last week, we've seen so much come out of Tampa. By the way, the Savannah Bananas sold out Raymond James Stadium, or 65,000 plus or whatever they put in that sucker. And here all these people showed up for a Savannah Bananas game, and the Rays can't even figure out how to repair their own roof of their stadium. They don't know what to do. And Rob Manfred, when St. Pete, the city of Tampa, Pinellas, all that stuff comes to a head, and basically like, okay, well, we're not gonna build a new stadium now, and we're not going to we may remodel the one we may remodel Tropicana Field. We may remodel that whole sucker for a 10-year window and circle back around in 2037 and see where we are. If you're Rob Manfred, you don't have a choice anymore. You got to step in and look at ownership here and go, that's it. And yes, you can force owners to sell. You have to look around and go, tell me this. How is this current situation in Tampa beneficial to the rest of Major League Baseball? It's not. Unless you count every year when the Rays are trading their best players away to give other teams treks to the World Series or treks to the Major League Baseball postseason. I've said this, I'll say it again, something I said a year ago. Not only should Major League Baseball step in and force a sale here, who should buy the Rays? Said it for a decade now. Disney. Disney should buy the Rays. You add it as an attraction at the park. Like Star Wars World. You do. Now, I don't know, Hollywood Studios, wherever you want to put the sucker, you put that sucker on what I call the Disney campus. Put it there. It's like a ride. You get to go to the game. Now, you'd have to have a separate gate. It gets a little tricky because, do you want people that just want to go to the game and not the rest of the park? You think about the captive audience. You'd be America's team within a decade. Family's going, sitting there. Dad's exhausted because he's had to walk the kids around for the better part of the last, 6-7 hours. Wants to get away, wants to go to the game at night. I think if you put a stadium right next to, look, I know they're kind of landlocked in some of the places. Some places they're not. You put a baseball park on there, like it's just another realm, another part of Disney. You're talking about a cash cow. Now, look, I know that there's this affinity of wanting a ballpark in downtown Tampa, and maybe they force the sale and get this done, and they find $1 billion somewhere in Ybor, and it's great. Fantastic. But the best place for the Rays is Orlando, and it's owned by Disney. Oh, you can't do that? Why not? You mean the 12,000 people that go to a game now? Are you kidding me? It'd be monstrous. It would be monstrous. And the attraction, and could you imagine when Ohtani and the Dodgers would come to Orlando to watch the Rays play or whatever you'd call them at that point? It'd be great. Wanted to wrap with this. And Rory McIlroy in a playoff in the Players. And you know how this lines itself up now. Players in March, Masters April, PGA May, June, U.S. Open, July, Open Championship. Where do we sit with Rory? What's amazing to this is I forgot how young he really is. Was he 35? And it's hard to believe that Rory hasn't won a major in over a decade. He hasn't. And he won the Players 6 years ago. And if he wins it again, what would that be? It'd be his second Players' Championship. He's never won a Masters. He's won one U.S. Open. He's won one Open. Was that Carnoustie? And then he's won the PGA twice. So what would this mean? Well, it'd just be another feather in his cap. I mean, it's not a major. The Masters, the green jacket's the one that eludes him, but it would give golf some momentum that would be interesting momentum, that would be, for lack of a better word, heritage momentum. Because what do you have? You had Scotty Scheffler, okay? And then we had a run in there where over the course of 18 majors, we had 18 different winners, something like that. And then Scotty Scheffler wins a couple last year. And the year before that, it was the Live Tour. Golf has just had this strange run this decade. Just this bizarre, strange, I can't put my finger on it. It's Saudi Arabia, and it's just bizarre. And if Rory can win the Players, it's not going to transcend the game or catapult everybody into 2026 or 2025. It doesn't mean he's going to win the Masters, but if he wins, it's like, all right, Rory just wins the Players. Okay, here's a little momentum. It's okay. Is this finally Rory's Masters? That's what the talk will be. He wins it. Even if he doesn't win, it'll still be there. But if somehow Rory can win the Players on Monday, win the playoff, that's what the discussion will be. Is this Rory's year? As opposed to what? Yeah. Tiger Achilles, nowhere to be found. What else would it be? It's been 7 years since he came back at Augusta. That's hard to believe. 7 years. What else would it be? I don't know what else you hang the hat on. It gives that sport at least a storyline heading into the Masters. Harp on Sports, the Bar, podcast, media, audio, radio network. Follow, share, like, subscribe at Harp on Sports Twitter, at Harp on Sports Instagram, Harp on Sports, the auditory route, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Harp on Sports, the Bar, YouTube page, Harp on Sports Facebook page, and of course, harponsports.com. Remember, stay clean, stay focused, stay strong. Frankenstein. Have fun with your friends.